Good morning, Ms. Tan. This is Group 2, and we are here to present our findings for ICA2a. So the country that we are venturing into is India, and our chosen company is a Singapore-based company called 7x6. So let's first get to know who is the government for India. Well, India is a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic with a parliamentary form of government, which is federal in structure with unitary features.
Moving on to government stability, we have the three index of political stability and absence of violence, government effectiveness, and regulatory quality. Firstly, looking at political stability and absence of violence, India actually achieved a above average score of around 1.5 score from 2016 onwards, and the range is measured between negative 2.5 to 2.5, measured by the worldwide governance indicators. This suggests that India is politically stable, and the likelihood of political instability and political violence, including terrorism, are lower than average, therefore making it a safe environment for businesses to set up in India. Secondly, we have the government effectiveness. For this index, India actually achieved a high score of around 2.22 score from 2016 onwards. Once again, the range is between negative 2.5 to 2.5, measured by the worldwide governance indicators. This suggests that the quality of public service, civil service, policy implementation and formulation, and the credibility of government's commitment to improving or maintaining these aspects are very effective in India, therefore creating a good environment for businesses to set up in India. Lastly, we have the regulatory quality. Under this index, India actually also achieved a very high score of around 2.14 score from 2016 onwards, which once again measured between negative 2.5 to 2.5 and measured by the worldwide governance indicators. This means that India is actually able to formulate policy and regulations that permits and promotes private sector developments so that the business-led initiatives such as research and development partnerships, knowledge sharing platforms, technology and skill transfers have the potential to kickstart the development, enable productivity gains and generate better job quality, which overall enhances the business environment in India. So all in all, India is a very political stable country and does not have any major risks involving the government sector or politics sector. So using the index above, it's actually safe to say that businesses would have little to no political issues when they expand their businesses to India.
So now for the legal environment, I'll be talking about the labor laws in India. So India labor law are implemented mainly to safeguard the worker rights, ensure fair wages, and promote workplace safety and welfare. So with these labor laws put in place, Singapore companies expanding over to India have to ensure that they understand the legal environment of India and comply with these rules and laws. So India ranked 63 out of 190 countries in ease of doing business with a score of 71, indicating a relatively business-friendly environment. The score in 2020 has also shown improvement from 2019, reflecting a government's effort in enhancing the business environment of India. Thus, we can see that India is trying to encourage more businesses to operate there where more freedom is given to the business. This can be seen where the level of bureaucracy is moderately well. Next, India has a low score of 41 for government intervention in content availability, indicating limited press freedom and high government control. Ranking 150 out of 180 countries, India has significant restrictions of public information, data, and news. So as you can see from the graph on the right, it shows that the India score is below the world median. So this indicates higher government intervention compared to most countries. So this lack of transparency hinders the assessment of the feasibility of expansion and requires additional time, resources, and expertise for Singapore companies such as 7x6 to expand over. Moving on to the judicial independence, it is the strength of courts of justice without any influence or interference that may result in biased decision making. So the indicator ranges from 1 to 7, with 7 being entirely independent of influence. So India has a score of 4.29, which is higher than the world median. So this suggests that it is performing better than the world average, and more informed and unbiased decisions will be made. Hence, India has a fairer judgment than most countries worldwide and also a more secure legal environment in this aspect. Next, for International Property Right Index, it measures the protection and enforcement of intellectual property in India. So with a lower score of 5.143 than the world average of 5.24, it suggests that India has a relatively weaker protection of property rights since a higher score means stronger protection. So this means that the businesses will be more vulnerable to copyright infringement due to the weak protection of parents and trademarks of their own. Next, we have the Corruption Protection Index. So 0 conveys that the country is highly corrupted and 100 is very clean. So India has a Corruption Protection Index score of 40, which shows a high level of corruption. So this can lead to unfair competitions for small and new businesses like Sense by 6 and a loss of confidence from investors and shareholders. They will also face the challenges of corruption in the business environment. Therefore, for Sense by 6 to enter the Indian market, it will face operation risk from its illegal environment. They will need to understand these risks and carefully navigate them.
For our social stability analysis, firstly, we have the likelihood of violent demonstrations via riots and mob violence. It has a high likelihood with a small rating of 2 in 2015, steeply increasing to a high of 4 from 2017 to 2022, using the GPI index from 1 being very goodly low to 5 being badly high. Secondly, tourist activity is also a high using the GPI index. India has an average of 4.065 between 2015 to 2022, with a peak of 4.18 in 2018, but slowly decreasing to 3.99 in 2022. Even though there is a trend of tourist activity going down, it is still high. Lastly, the level of violent crime. It has a level of violent crime of middle, with an average of 2.375 from 2015 to 2022 and a constant of 2 in 2018 to 2021. In the latest year, there's been a sharp increase to 2.5 in 2022. This shows that the level of violent crime is increasing. Overall, we find that India is socially unstable as the likelihood of violent demonstrations and terrorist activities seem to remain high, and also the level of violent crime is getting higher in recent years. This will lead to ownership risks as this level of violent demonstration would cause harm to employees who are manning the physical store and damage the physical store themselves.
Next, I will cover India and Singapore's participation in international organizations and trade blocs. Both countries actively participate in global discussions and are members of several trade blocs and organizations. There are 6 international organizations that both Singapore and India are a part of, namely the Commonwealth, United Nations, World Trade Organization, Asia-Middle East Dialogue, Asia-Europe Meeting, and Non-Aligned Movement and Group of 77. India is also part of Group of 20 and was assumed the 2023 G2O presidency. While Singapore is not a G2O member, they have still been invited to participate in the discussions. Besides the international organizations, Singapore and India are also involved in 3 trade agreements together, namely the ASEAN-India Free Trade Area, Global System of Trade Preferences, and most importantly, India-Singapore Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement. The India-Singapore Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement is extremely important in this case, since the agreement actually states that it eliminates tariffs on 81% of Singapore's exports to India. This provides an incentive for Singapore-based companies like Sense by 6 to expand into India and access India's large consumer market. To conclude, both countries' participations in international organizations and trade blocs help foster a closer bond between Singapore and India, and thus trade activities can take place easily between the two countries. This means that Singapore-based companies like Sense by 6 will be able to export to India without any issues, and these companies will be able to benefit from the trade agreements. Thus, from India's active participation in international organizations and trade blocs, we can conclude that it is politically stable and there are no major risks of expanding into India. In fact, we can conclude that it supports the expansion of Singapore-based company Send by Six into India.
So now we're talking about the relationship between countries. India and Singapore have a close relationship with each other due to their economic and political interests aligning with each other. This can be seen where agreements are concluded between India and Singapore, reflecting the growing overall cooperation, providing a larger framework for activities between the government, commercial, and people-to-people exchanges. For example, the ISMR currently allowed in-depth and productive wide-ranging discussions from a strategic and long-term perspective on existing and new cooperation areas. This focus on digital connectivity, fintech, green economy, green hydrogen, skill development, and food security, so that and thus shows the strategic partnership between India and Singapore. Next, I'll be talking about the neighboring countries around India. So generally, they have a good relationship except for Pakistan. These 9 countries include Bangladesh, Myanmar, China, Bhutan, Nepal, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, which are mostly in good relations. They are in good relations because in 2014, India sets up a neighborhood first policy, which states to give immediate priority to help neighbors so that they can improve relations. This is done where they also do dialogue so that they can build political connectivity with each other and resolve bilateral issues through mutual agreement. Lastly, the relationship between major countries and India is good. This can be seen between India and US, where they work on defense and counterterrorism, and their economy between each other from trade is also very good. Thus, it is politically stable with no major risk. I'll be talking about why we chose SEM by 6 and the risk involved. The operational risk due to the legal environment is a bit high, and if SEM by 6 does not want to manufacture in India, they can always ship their goods over to India. SEM by 6 manufactures its goods in Singapore, and because of its close relationship between India and Singapore, the tax will be a bit lower and will be easier to ship their goods over. The ownership risk with SEM by 6 in India is high due to its violent crime, but SEM by 6 has a strong e-commerce and retail platform. So if they would like to, they do not have to focus on retail and focus more on e-commerce, which makes the ownership risk less impactful. Lastly, there's market opportunity for SEM by 6 to go over, and since there's no major political risk, it may be easier for them to move over. Thank you, and we have come to the end of this presentation.